Hi, my name is Emma Collins, and today, I'm not just sharing a story. I'm sharing the moment my life fell apart and how that same pain turned into a blessing I never saw coming. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and comment below where you're watching from. I love reading your thoughts and stories too. Now, let me take you back to the day my husband betrayed me and how his betrayal and my best friend's greed accidentally made me a millionaire. When people saw Daniel and me together, they saw what looked like a picture-perfect marriage. We were that couple everyone pointed to at weddings and said, "That's what I want someday." Daniel was the kind of man who could light up a room without saying much. He had that quiet confidence, a presence that made people feel safe around him. At parties, he'd hold my hand, kiss my forehead, and make little jokes that made everyone laugh. And I, like a fool in love, believed every touch, every word. We met at a charity event 8 years ago. He was helping organize donations for a local children's hospital, and I was volunteering at the registration table. He walked up, smiled, and said, "You have the kind of face that makes people want to believe in good things." I remember blushing like a teenager. He had that effect on people, especially me. Our relationship moved fast. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. He'd send flowers to my office, surprise me with coffee on my busiest mornings, and write little notes that said things like, "You're my calm in every storm." Everyone around us said we were goals. When we got married, it was the kind of wedding people still talked about years later. Soft golden lights, live music, and laughter that filled the air like magic. Sophie, my best friend, stood beside me as my maid of honor. She cried harder than anyone when Daniel and I said our vows. Looking back now, I wonder what those tears were really for. Our early years of marriage were beautiful. We bought a cozy little house just outside the city. I painted the walls myself, and Daniel spent weekends fixing things just to make me smile. We'd cook together, argue about silly things like whether pineapple belonged on pizza, and end every fight with him pulling me close and whispering, "You know I can't stay mad at you." He used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. Or maybe I just wanted to believe that. As time passed, Daniel's business began to grow. He was ambitious, determined, the kind of man who believed he was destined for something big. I admired that about him. I was proud of him. I supported him through every late night, every failed deal, every stressful meeting. I believed we were building something together. But slowly, little cracks started to show. He became busier, distant. His smile, the one that used to melt me, started to feel rehearsed. Our dinners turned into silent meals, filled with phone notifications and excuses about clients calling. I told myself it was just a phase. Every marriage goes through rough patches, right? That's what I thought. That's what every woman in love tells herself, until the truth hits so hard it steals the breath from your lungs. At that time, I still believed we had the kind of love people envied. I didn't realize yet that behind that perfect picture, one of us had already stepped out of the frame. Her name was Sophie Turner, and for as long as I could remember, she was my person, my sister by choice. We met in college, two broke girls sharing instant noodles, laughter, and late-night dreams about the future. She was bold, fearless, and everything I wasn't. If I was quiet and cautious, Sophie was the spark that lit every room she entered. When Daniel came into my life, Sophie was the first person I introduced him to. I still remember that night, the three of us sitting in my apartment, eating takeout and laughing like we'd known each other forever. Daniel thought she was hilarious. Sophie thought he was charming. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Over the years, Sophie became a constant presence in our marriage. She was there for every celebration, our first anniversary, our housewarming, my birthdays. She'd tease Daniel like an annoying sister-in-law and call him Mr. Perfect. He'd laugh and call her the troublemaker. I saw it as innocent fun. Why wouldn't I? She was my best friend. When Daniel decided to start his business, a digital marketing firm, Sophie immediately offered to help. "Come on, she said, flashing that confident smile of hers. "You know I'm great with branding. Let me help you guys get this thing off the ground." I was thrilled. The idea of my husband and my best friend working together made me proud. I thought we were becoming this unstoppable team, the three of us building something meaningful. But things started to change. Sophie began calling Daniel more than she called me. At first, it was about business stuff, client meetings, presentations, strategies. Then it became more frequent. I'd wake up at midnight to the sound of his phone buzzing. When I asked, he'd say, "It's Sophie. She's working late again." I laughed it off, even joked, "You two talk more than I talk to my husband." They'd just smile. But that smile, now that I think back, it wasn't innocent. It was rehearsed. Then came the little things. Sophie showing up at our house uninvited. Her perfume lingering in the hallway after she left. Her lipstick shade, a deep wine red, suddenly appearing on a mug Daniel used. Still, I ignored it. Because she was my best friend. Because I didn't want to be that wife, the paranoid, insecure one who doubts the two people she trusts the most. One evening, I overheard them laughing in the living room while I was in the kitchen. Daniel said, "You always know how to make me smile." Sophie giggled. "That's my specialty." Something in me shifted that night. It was small, quiet, like a whisper of warning I wasn't ready to hear. When she hugged me goodbye later, she said, "You're so lucky, Em. Daniel really loves you." But the way her eyes lingered on him said something else, something that made my stomach twist. That was the first time I felt it, that strange, suffocating shadow creeping into my marriage. It had Sophie's scent, her laughter, her lipstick. And even though I didn't know it yet, that shadow was about to consume everything I thought was real. It was a Wednesday evening, the kind that feels painfully ordinary until it isn't. The rain was falling outside, steady and calm, the way it always did when Daniel claimed he was working late. I remember setting the dinner table for two, just like I always did. His plate stayed empty as the food went cold, and the clock ticked louder with every passing minute. When he finally texted, "Don't wait up, big client dinner," I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to. I told myself he was just busy, that this was how success looked: long nights, missed dinners, and tired smiles. But that night, something felt different. Maybe it was the silence of the house, or maybe it was the way my reflection looked back at me from the window, tired, unsure, and quietly breaking. I noticed his laptop sitting on the study table, open but locked. Daniel was always protective of it, like it held the secret formula to his success. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But that night, curiosity felt heavier than guilt. My hands were shaking as I typed in our anniversary date, 0622, just to see if it would unlock. It did. At first, I saw normal things: client folders, marketing drafts, invoices. Then, a folder labeled Personal caught my eye. My heart pounded as I clicked it open. Inside were emails. Dozens of them. Between Daniel and Sophie. The subject lines looked harmless: strategy meeting notes, client follow-up, dinner plan. But when I opened one, the words inside hit me like a blade straight to the chest. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." She has no idea, does she? Not yet. Let's keep it that way until after the deal closes. I froze. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and nausea. Scrolling further, I saw pictures. A blurry selfie of them at a hotel. A dinner table with 2 glasses of wine. A hand, his hand, resting on hers. For a moment, everything around me went quiet. I couldn't hear the rain, the ticking clock, or even my own heartbeat. The man I had trusted with my soul, the friend I had shared every secret with, they were the ones tearing my world apart. I wanted to scream. To cry. To throw something. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, staring at the screen, the tears refusing to fall, my body too numb to react. A message popped up on the screen, a new one. From Sophie. "Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Same place." Tomorrow. That meant it wasn't over. It wasn't a mistake. It was a routine. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. That was the night my love story turned into a lie. I looked around my home. The framed wedding photos, the couch we picked together, the life I thought we built, and realized everything was a performance I hadn't been invited to anymore. But one thought, cold and sharp, began to form in my mind. If they thought I was weak, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The night I discovered the truth, something inside me broke, but not in the way you'd expect. It wasn't a loud, dramatic kind of heartbreak you see in movies. It was quiet, cold, like the moment before a storm, when the air goes still, and you just know something powerful is coming. For hours, I sat in the dark, my mind replaying every memory like an old film reel. The dinners, the inside jokes, the whispered promises. I kept asking myself, how could they? But beneath the hurt, another thought began to rise. What now? Because crying wouldn't change anything. Begging for answers wouldn't make it right. If I was going to lose everything, my husband, my best friend, my peace, then I was going to lose it on my own terms. Daniel and Sophie thought they were clever. They thought I was too naive, too trusting, too soft to see through their lies. They had no idea who I could become when pushed into a corner. I started small. I made sure to act normal, even loving. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his client dinners, and smiled when he kissed me goodbye. He didn't notice how forced my smile had become, how hollow my voice sounded when I said, I love you. But behind that mask, I was building something, a plan. A few months earlier, Daniel had asked for my help investing in his business. I'd used $70,000 of my personal savings to buy shares under my name. At the time, I thought I was helping us. I thought we were a team. Now, I realized that money was my key, my quiet weapon. I started reviewing all the documents, the contracts, the emails he'd sent investors. The more I read, the more I realized how sloppy he'd become. There were lies buried in those papers, forged signatures, hidden transactions, even funds moved to Sophie's account. Every piece of evidence I found, I saved in a hidden folder. Every call he made, every late-night meeting, I documented. I wasn't just a heartbroken wife anymore. I was preparing for war. When Sophie texted me one day, asking if I wanted to join her for lunch, I agreed. She smiled the entire time, pretending everything was normal. I watched her talk about Daniel like he wasn't the man sleeping in my bed. And all I could think was, you have no idea what's coming. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, watching Daniel sleep peacefully beside me. The man who once promised to protect me now looked so small, so unaware. I whispered quietly, you chose the wrong woman to betray. I didn't have a clear plan yet, not fully, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to confront them with tears. I was going to destroy them with silence. And when the moment was right, I'd make sure they both realized that the woman they underestimated, the one they called too soft, was about to take everything they cared about. That was the night I stopped being a victim and started becoming something far more dangerous, a woman who had nothing left to lose. Once I found the emails and the photos, the betrayal stopped being an abstract pain and started becoming a sequence of facts, dates, locations, receipts, hotel names. The knowledge made my anger sharper and clearer. It also made me painfully aware of how much they'd tried to hide. But hiding requires mistakes, and mistakes leave trails. The affair didn't stay secret for long. It grew bolder. Daniel began taking business trips that lasted longer than he said. Sophie's stories about strategy sessions suddenly included flights, late dinners, and hotel bookings. There were small things I could no longer ignore. A lipstick stain on a napkin, an unfamiliar perfume on a scarf, a number in his phone saved as Sam, that always lit up at strange hours. Each little thing was a breadcrumb. And with each breadcrumb, their confidence and their carelessness grew. One evening, weeks after the discovery, Daniel came home smelling like someone else's cologne. He laughed too loudly when I asked about his night, and his hands fumbled when I reached for his phone. It was as if their guilt made them clumsy. I stayed calm. Calmness was my weapon. I let him talk, let him apologize vaguely, let him fold back into the routine we'd built. If they wanted to live a lie by day and a secret by night, I would let them for now. Because secrets always unravel, and I was going to watch them do it. The unraveling began with a message Sophie mistakenly sent to my husband's phone instead of hers. It was a short, casual line. Got the confirmation noon Le Jardin, same table. Daniel's thumb hovered over the reply field before he shoved the phone into his pocket. He didn't see the look on my face. He didn't hear the silence that followed. That accidental text was the confirmation I'd been waiting for, proof that their meetings were not business strategy but rendezvous. I started collecting everything that proved what I already knew. I archived emails, saved chat screenshots, photographed receipts and boarding passes, and printed hotel invoices. I learned how to make copies look official and how to timestamp digital files so there could be no argument later. I documented dates and times in a notebook I kept hidden, each entry precise and unemotional, like a ledger. It felt surgical, a slow, methodical excision of betrayal. While I was gathering evidence, I reached out quietly to people who could help me. I called an attorney I trusted and asked what protections were possible if things went wrong. I opened a separate account in my name and moved small amounts into it so Daniel wouldn't notice. Money, after all, can be both lifeline and leverage. I kept conversations with friends vague because I couldn't risk Sophie catching wind of what I was doing. Paradoxically, the more they flaunted their secret, the more secure I felt. Their arrogance was fueling my case. And yet the hardest part was not the proof or the plans, it was pretending everything was fine. I laughed at dinner parties, posted smiling photos on social media, and rehearsed small talk so well that even our closest friends believed me. When they kissed in corners or slipped away for late-night flights, I kept my face blank. It wasn't cruelty. It was strategy. They thought they were living a thrilling double life. They thought their choices would remain hidden beneath a gloss of success and secrecy. What they couldn't see was the quiet empire I was building in the background, not of money at first, but of evidence, control, and a plan that would strip them of the power they'd stolen from me. By the time Daniel and Sophie thought they had perfected their secret world, I had already mapped out every corner of it. The affair wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a pattern, predictable and almost boring. What I hadn't realized yet was that their downfall wouldn't come from my anger or my pain. It would come from their own greed. It started quietly. Daniel's business, the one I had helped fund, began gaining attention. A few local investors were interested, and there were whispers of a potential buyout. Money was finally flowing in, and with it came arrogance. Daniel walked around the house like a man untouchable, smiling at his reflection in the mirror more than he smiled at me. Sophie became more present too, dropping by with urgent business updates, dressing sharper, and calling Daniel partner a little too easily. What neither of them knew was that the $70,000 investment I had made wasn't under Daniel's name. It was under mine. Every legal document, every ownership certificate, all of it carried my signature. I had given him the illusion of control, but the foundation was built on my paper. It was poetic, really. He built his empire on the trust he destroyed. One afternoon, while he was out meeting clients, I got a call from one of the investors. They wanted to schedule a presentation for the following week and asked who should attend as the company's co-owner. Emma Collins, I said without hesitation. The silence that followed told me they had no idea Daniel wasn't the only owner. That's when I realized how deep his lies went, even to the people funding him. The next few weeks revealed everything. Daniel and Sophie weren't just sleeping together. They were also scheming to push me out of the business. Sophie, clever as she thought she was, suggested to Daniel that they offer me a settlement to buy back my shares for a small sum. She called it a gesture of goodwill. I called it my opportunity. I agreed to meet with them privately. They sat across from me, two faces pretending confidence, but reeking of guilt. Daniel tried to sound professional. Sophie smiled too much. They offered me $25,000 to walk away. I almost laughed. I looked at her and said softly, "You always were ambitious, Sophie. Just not very smart." Her expression faltered, but Daniel stayed silent, mistaking my calm for surrender. I signed the papers, the ones they had drafted, but replaced them later with the real ones my lawyer prepared. Sophie thought she'd bought me out. In reality, she had just handed over her shares to me. 2 months later, the unexpected happened. A major tech firm made an offer to acquire Daniel's company for over $2.3 million. Sophie's greed had locked her out completely. Daniel's arrogance made him blind. The only name that appeared on the primary ownership documents, the one that received the largest payout, was mine. I didn't even have to lift a finger for revenge. They destroyed themselves chasing something shiny and temporary, while I quietly secured everything permanent. When the buyout finalized, I received the transfer notification, 7 figures glowing on my phone screen. That same day, Sophie tried calling Daniel over and over, but he didn't answer. They turned on each other, like thieves caught in their own trap. Greed did what my heartbreak never could. It made them destroy each other, and in the process, made me rich beyond anything they ever imagined. When the buyout was finalized, it felt unreal. One morning, I was a wife trapped in betrayal, and by evening, I was sitting in my lawyer's office watching a transaction alert flash across my phone, $1,180,000 wired directly into my account. For a moment, I just stared at the number. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like silence after a storm, that strange calm where you don't know whether to laugh, cry, or just breathe. Daniel had no idea what had happened until days later. He came home furious, waving papers, shouting my name like the world owed him an explanation. His company was gone, his reputation in shambles. The investors had pulled out after learning about his unprofessional conduct, a story I had subtly let slip in the right circles. He slammed his fist on the table, his voice breaking between anger and disbelief. "What did you do, Emma?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply looked at him and said, "I protected what was mine." For a long time, he just stood there, speechless. The same man who once called himself my protector, now realizing I had protected myself from him. As for Sophie, her fall was faster. She called me dozens of times after discovering she no longer owned a single share in the company she'd schemed to control. The last time she showed up at my door, her eyes were wild, desperate. "Emma, please, you don't understand." Daniel promised. I cut her off with a calm smile.
No, Sophie.
"I understand perfectly. You both wanted everything. Now you can share nothing." She left without another word, but not before I noticed the trembling in her hands, the same hands that once hugged me at my wedding, that wrote messages to my husband behind my back. In the weeks that followed, the chaos they created began to consume them. Daniel tried starting another company, but word spread fast about his behavior. The investors who once praised him now avoided his calls. Sophie vanished from social media, her once perfect image fading into silence. I sold the house, the same one that held memories of laughter and lies, and moved into a small but beautiful apartment overlooking the city. The first night there, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, watching the skyline glow, and whispered to myself, "You made it." But the truth is, my victory wasn't about money. It was about freedom. I had spent years shrinking myself for love that wasn't real, loyalty that wasn't returned, and people who didn't deserve me. Now I had nothing tying me down, no lies, no manipulation, no pretending. Just me. Sometimes I still get messages from old friends asking about Daniel and me, the perfect couple. I just smile and tell them, perfection is expensive. They couldn't afford it. The best part? I never had to ruin them. They did that all on their own. I simply stepped aside and let karma do her work, quietly, elegantly, and with interest. The morning after I moved into my new apartment, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the curtains, soft, golden, and quiet. For the first time in years, there was no tension humming in my chest, no phone vibrating with half-truths, no footsteps pacing in another room. Just silence. Just peace. I made coffee, sat by the window, and looked at the city below, alive, busy, indifferent. The world hadn't stopped because my marriage ended. The universe didn't mourn my heartbreak. And strangely, that realization didn't hurt. It freed me. The woman I used to be, the one who cried behind bathroom doors, who believed loyalty could fix betrayal, she was gone. In her place was someone new. Someone who had seen the worst and still stood tall. For weeks, I didn't tell anyone where I'd gone. I needed time to remember who I was before I became Daniel's wife. Before my life revolved around someone else's dreams. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. The smell of fresh paint, the feel of color spreading across a blank canvas, it was therapy. Every stroke was like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. With part of the money from the buyout, I launched a small business, a community for women rebuilding after betrayal. Coaching, workshops, and safe spaces for those who had been through what I'd endured. I called it the Phoenix Project, because that's what I felt like, a woman burned to ashes, only to rise again, stronger, sharper, and far more beautiful than before. Emails started pouring in, women from around the world writing to share their stories, thanking me for helping them see that heartbreak doesn't have to be an ending. It can be the beginning of becoming. Their words reminded me that my pain wasn't wasted. It had a purpose. There were nights when the memories still tried to haunt me, the laughter I once shared with Daniel, the trust one once gave Sophie. But instead of breaking me, those memories became lessons. Daniel taught me that charm without character is just manipulation. Sophie taught me that not every friend clapping for you is happy for you. And I taught myself that peace is the most valuable thing a woman can own. Months later, Daniel tried reaching out. A simple email.
I'm sorry. Can we talk? I didn't reply.
Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always need words. Sometimes, the act of living well, of thriving, is forgiveness enough. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman I actually admire. Not because she's rich or successful, but because she survived something meant to break her and turned it into her rebirth. If I could speak to the woman I was a year ago, I'd tell her this. You will lose people you thought you couldn't live without. And that will be your greatest gift, because it will lead you back to you. So this is me, Emma Collins, the woman who lost everything but found herself. And to every woman listening, you're not broken. You are simply becoming. If this story touched you, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories of love, betrayal, and strength.